You're listening to the official podcast of Bloodstock Open Air Festival. Bloodstock Radio.
Catch the play now, eye to eye. Don't let chances press you by. Always someone at your back, binding daytime for a time. Check for decoys, stay sharp-edged. Double crossers, get your head. Carpetbaggers, bluff and strike. Kiss of Judas, spider line.
Yes, hello, good evening and welcome to Bloodstock Radio, the official podcast of the Bloodstock Open Air Festival. My name is Squatter, this is podcast number 76, and we've opened it up there with a track from Vader, that's called Stealer, and that is from their latest EP, Thy Messenger, released a couple of weeks ago on Nuclear Blast Records. And the big Bloodstock link with them this year is that they're actually going to be a guest headliner at one of our Metal to the Masses finals. Now, as most of you will know, they are a Polish band, so I'm sure you must be thinking, well, we have Metal to the Masses in Poland, and they had Decapitated at their final last year, so it must be the Polish Metal to the Masses. But no. Somehow, after getting Psycho Stick last year, the rather wonderful but at the same time absolutely crazy Sky from House of Pain events has somehow managed to book them for the Northamptonshire Metal to the Masses Grand Final on Saturday, June 29th, and that will be the middle day of a 3-day event called Hopfest. That takes place at the Black Prince in Northampton, starting on Friday 28th and ending on Sunday the 30th. And it also features the likes of Bloodstock alumni like Divine Chaos and Bigfoot, alongside former Metal to the Masses winners like Ashbourne, Democritus, From Eden to Exile and End of Salvation, and they've even got at least one Bloodstock 2019 band in there in the form of Damnation's Hammer. So get along to that weekend if you can, and indeed to as many of our Metal to the Masses finals as you can, as we're still rattling through them at a rate of knots. We had Bournemouth, North Wales and South Wales last weekend, and this weekend we have Norway and Poland, both this Saturday, that is the 15th of June, and we will of course be bringing you some music and some interviews with all of those successful bands in the coming weeks. But on tonight's show, we had just two main sections really, as earlier this week I was fortunate enough to be in Cardiff on Monday night and Bristol on Tuesday night to catch up with a band that many Bloodstockers said were their band of the weekend at Bloodstock last year. That is of course Alien Weaponry. Now up until Monday they'd only played that one UK gig with us at Catton Park last year, but they've been back on these shores this week playing in Wales, England, Scotland and even over in Ireland ahead of their performance at Download Festival this Saturday, where they've actually been bumped up from the Dogtooth stage right onto the main stage. So it seems that the organisers there finally caught up with why we were so excited about them last year. So we'll have a catch-up with the Alien Weaponry guys later, but before that we're going to return to a theme that we've had a few features on this year on the podcast, namely that of mental health, as we're going to talk to an organisation from Northern Ireland that has strong links with Bloodstock, as they were formed following the tragic loss of a young man who just months earlier had played at Bloodstock 2017 after his band won the Belfast Metal to the Masses. So we're talking to Metal for Life Northern Ireland up next in our big interview.
The Big Interview.
Okay, next up on Bloodstock Radio, we are talking to the folks from Metal for Life Northern Ireland. That is Gillian Cansanaho, Gareth Ruddock and Chris Mulholland. How are you all doing?
Hi.
Good.
Hello. Paul. We're all good today. Thanks.
Okay, cool. So, so basically you are a mental health charity over in Northern Ireland, and we've got strong links with Bloodstock, and I'll just go through for our listeners that aren't aware of the situation with this. So, back in May 2017, so 2 years ago, a band called Shrouded won the Metal to the Masses in Belfast, and your son Danny was the lead singer and the guitarist for the band, and played at Bloodstock last year, and then sadly we lost him a couple of months after Bloodstock, and that's why you started up the charity, yeah?
Yeah, you're quite right. I suppose Danny's musical career was, quite short. Unfortunately, he took his own life after a relatively short period of depression in October 2017, and he was 23. He was my only child, the only child of my husband and myself, and obviously not only did it devastate us, but it had a massive impact on the metal community in Northern Ireland. Danny was a very well-liked guy, and we always often say that everybody loved Danny except Danny towards the end of his life. And we also, the metal community really came around Athie and I, my husband and I, in huge support. But we also realised at the same time that there were an awful lot of other people within the metal community who struggle with their mental health too. And we started to raise money and raise awareness of mental illness here in Northern Ireland. And we thought it would be a great idea if we could start a peer support group And with the help of one of the bigger organisations here, Aware NI, we were able to set up a support group for metalheads. So it's run by metalheads and it's for metalheads. And as you probably know, I'm sure you've come across it yourself from time to time, we all have, there tends to be a stigma associated with not only mental illness, but being a bit different as well. Metalheads and other subcultures being one of those things. So by having a support group specifically for metalers, we're breaking that stigma down just that little bit more. So we started it up. I think we had our first support group last April, and we've been having regular meetings really ever since. And the group has grown from strength to strength. I mean, we really can't believe it ourselves sometimes how big it has grown and how successful it has been. And obviously we've carried Danny along with us, and it has been massive support to my husband and myself as well. And largely down to these two guys that are sitting beside me here, Chris and Gareth. But we've been determined to get it right. Obviously, mental illness is something that you need to tread lightly with, but we like to think that we're providing a really beneficial environment for people to come to, talk to other like-minded people. And, you know, we quite often just talk about bands and music and stuff, not just necessarily the heavy stuff, you know, but so it's just a great place to be, and we've had huge support from everyone, and I think people just like to know that we're there, you know.
Yeah.
So it's worked really, really well. Probably much more successful than I ever could have imagined in a year, you know. But we're determined, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those strange things, mental health, as you say about, you know, metalers and I think men in particular as well. It's one of those sort of, you know, that phrase "man up" that you always hear, and it's you know, talking about it. Obviously, we've tried to focus a bit of it on the Bloodstock Radio podcast over the last year, 6 months or so. We have H from Acid Rain, who's been a regular contributor, talking about his own mental health, and I believe that you guys have spoken to him recently for his own Talking Bollocks podcast, and you're going to be appearing on that soon as well. So
yep, that's next month.
Yeah, so he just sent something in. I mean, he was originally just doing music stuff for me because I always sort of look for contributors for the podcast, and then he sent me in something, and I had no idea really. I knew he'd struggled a little bit because I've been friends with him for a few years now since the band came back, and I knew he'd struggled a little bit, but he just sent me in this sort of like 30-minute clip, and he says, "I'm not sure if this is of use to the podcast, but then he sent it in, and I had listened to it, and it was very deeply personal, and very, you know, it just surprised me really. And I was like, I will absolutely put that out. Yes, I will put that out, because when I think, and again, it's the same thing with Danny really. You look at it on the surface of it. And, you know, H is the lead singer of Acid Rain. They headlined the Sophie Lancaster tent in 2016. Yeah. You know, you think lead singer of a band, he's out there in front of all these people. What's he got to worry about? And it's not as simple as that. There's so much going on with people.
And I think what sort of obviously came as a big shock is just how suddenly depression can take hold. You know, I think there's yet another stereotype about mental illness, that it's something that you have for your whole life, or, you know, but it really can affect anybody at any time, and it doesn't matter what your background is or what you've been through. If it doesn't discriminate at all, you know. So if it catches you, it catches you, and that's it. And, you know, I think having people like H and yourself and you know, various other people, hearing them in the metal community speak out about wanting to support groups like us and the, you know, charities and mental health professionals as well, is really valuable, because I suppose people that are struggling with these things just need that little bit of courage or encouragement to maybe seek the help that they need, seek the support that they need. And it really can make a massive difference. You know, even in the year we've been running our group, we have seen huge changes in some people's lives, which is, it's fantastic to see, you know. I think it does have to start with the individual, of course. Nobody's going to flick a switch one day and all of a sudden you'll be, you know, happy, that famous word, happy. But, what we can do is to be there to support people, to help make the decisions that they need to try and start on their road to recovery.
Yeah, you've touched on a few bits and bobs there, and if I could bring Chris in there, because I believe Chris is your resident psychologist, yeah. So from your side of things, then, yeah, just talk to us a little bit about what Gillian's just been saying there about the effects of these things.
Well, so mental illness in general is, just like Gillian was saying, can absolutely affect anyone, but specifically for the metal community, we are much more at risk of it. There's been research has found that we're 5 times more at risk of self-harm, suicide, general, the way we look usually, things like that we don't maybe look the same as, the majority, and that can make people then feel a bit more anxious, a bit more socially isolated, things like that. So we've got that as one contributing factor.
We do have a bigger problem in Northern Ireland here, I think, than in other places too.
In Northern Ireland we have a 25% higher rate of suicide and self-harm, and especially young males down by suicide, than the rest of the UK. We've got less funding than the rest of the UK. We've got more social deprivation than a lot of the UK, which again then is a massive contributing factor to people down by suicide. We've got the whole legacy of the Troubles here, which has maybe not affected mainland UK as much. We've got a lot just affecting us specifically here.
I'm really fortunate that I've never suffered with mental health. I just haven't. So from my point of view, that almost makes me feel that I should try to help. I mean, I had an interview with the Samaritans earlier on this year, because I started volunteering from them with them last year, because I saw one of these things going around about the statistics involved, and it was like 12 men a day in the UK committing suicide, and I thought that cannot be right. So as you should always do when you see stuff flying around Facebook, I researched it,
checked,
yeah, found the figures on the ONS, and it was absolutely right. That is 12 men a day, and I wanted to share that on Facebook, so I wrote my own little post, and then I linked a little thing to the Samaritans, and I just thought that's not really enough. I want to actually do something about it, because I've been doing this, sort of involved in the metal scene now for probably about 5-6 years, and I've met so many different bands at varying different levels, and I had I'd say a list of maybe about 20 or 30 musicians that I was checking in with on a regular basis, just because I knew they had either suffered with mental health, or sometimes you'll just see a post go up where you'll just say something, is anyone around? You'll just get something like that. Yeah. And I've always sort of gone out my way to just sort of talk to people. I've got a real problem with people sort of saying, if you need me, you know where I am. Well, that doesn't work with people. Yeah. People aren't going to reach out to that. You need to check in with them. Yeah. So I was doing that, and I was doing that with a lot of people, and I still do that now with quite a lot of people. But with the Samaritans, it was kind of, they've made that first step. They've phoned in, so they are reaching out. So you can sort of take it from there. So I've been doing that for, like, say, about 6 months now. Massively, massively rewarding, but learned so much about people in general, and the variety of struggles that people are going through. And it's not even that, The analogy that I always have is this idea of people, when they're in the Samaritans, they almost think, well, I've got to be on the edge of the cliff. And I'm like, no. You could be miles up the hill and just walking slowly towards it. You just could have had a bad day. Yeah. But it's just making you feel just so bad about things. And it's not dealing with those things that just make them all build up, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think as well with Samaritans, people then think that they're maybe taking time away from people who might need it more, which is absolutely not the case. Anyone who's phoning in, if you feel you need to phone the Samaritans, phone them, because that is what they're there for. They're more than happy just to, talk to anyone about this. And like you're saying about being up the hill, it's a similar situation we have with we have a similar service as well, Lifeline here, which we recommend a lot of our members use as well, because you can just phone them and they can help organise a wee bit of counselling for people and things like that. But it's the sort of thing, too, that we can phone, say, for a friend. You don't need to phone yourself. You don't need to be in crisis. You don't need to be, as you were saying, on that cliff edge. You can just phone when you need to. And as we've found again and again, early intervention is the best prevention. So we're trying to
Absolutely.
promote that as much as we can.
I think, and certainly in Danny's situation, because things took a grip so quickly, it wasn't long before he was at the point where, despite having all the support mechanisms around him, he hadn't the strength to engage, and he did have a lot of help, and this is, I suppose, maybe why Danny's death was so shocking, because he did have a lot of people around him and a lot of professional support for what he was going through. But sometimes, I suppose that's all we can do, is just emphasise that the urgency of it, I suppose, Paul, really for people to get help as soon as they start to feel that there's something not quite right here, And there's loads of support about, and obviously we're talking about support for metal fans in particular here, but there's a group in London for punks. There's motorbike groups that specifically look after those guys. You've got all the army veteran ones and so on. There's a group for everybody, really. And what we've noticed as well is that often the voluntary groups and the small charities are the ones that are the most passionate about it, and they'll throw their heart and soul into helping people because it has affected them so greatly. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're trying to do. We're all we can do is try and prevent other people feeling like me and my husband do, and hopefully prevent people from feeling the way Danny did too.
So what sort of, other than the support groups and that, what other sort of activities are you getting up to as a group, and how can people get involved and help support you guys as well? I mean, I'm sitting here now with one of your lovely T-shirts on, which I did just happen to have on today, because I bought it off you last week when I saw Simon sporting one at the Masters final. Modelling it looked beautifully as always. But yeah, so how can people get involved in you, and what other sort of activities and things are you doing that you're finding is helping?
Well, basically, I think obviously the core of what we do is around the peer support groups, and that's kind of where the real work, if you like, is done within Metal for Life NI. But obviously we realised very early on that wasn't going to simply be enough to just sit and have conversations and all the rest of it. There had to be a bit more output than that as well, because people do need a bit of help along the road to trying to recover. So it wasn't simply just enough to be able to sit around and talk, a couple of times a month and things like that. They're as helpful as that can all be. It was also about encouraging recovery. So, for example, doing things like taking them out on like a day trip, going back out to places like, we took a large group of people down to a place called Tullymore Forest Park, which is in the edge of the Mourne Mountains in Northern Ireland in County Down. And that was great because we were able to go out into the forest, do some mindfulness stuff, just observational things, walking around, looking, notice the trees, the birds. And it's amazing when you start talking to people about stuff like that, how much they don't actually realise to lift their heads and see what's around them and realise. And the other thing that's really key to Metal for Life and I is a lot of the things we try to do, any kind of things that we encourage, one of the basic things for it is it has to be free. As in, it doesn't cost people anything to do it. So, for example,
we're all a bit stingy, aren't we?
Yeah, that's what it is. But being able to go for a walk, exercise, fresh air, that sort of stuff as well. That's all very important to dealing with mental health and helping to build up people's resilience and coping methods. It's not all just about sitting around talking about it, although that is still a very big part of what we do, and it's probably at the core of what we do. So we've organised trips, we've gone out to nature, we've gone to museums, we've gone we've even had our support groups out in Botanic Gardens in Belfast on a nice day and things like that there, and just generally going, obviously we ourselves go to gigs and stuff as well, and we'll promote that, and just try and reach out to people, go to basically where the people we are trying to help will be, so the likes of your gigs and your clubs and things like that there as well. So generally trying to get around most of the places where we ourselves, the three of us, would sort of go to, and that, and where our crowd, if you like, would be. But it is very important, I think, that other than just having the support groups and that, there is a bit more output about that. One of the other things that we're trying to actively encourage as well is a problem we keep coming across is that whenever somebody who's not suffering is confronted by somebody who is suffering, they very often don't know what to say or do to them, with them, and that can be a real problem, because people then tend to run away from it and shy away from that problem as well. So a couple of the things that we've looked really into, obviously the three of us have done what's called the mental health first aid training, which for me personally was a big revelation to do that, because it alleviated so many doubts that I had about talking to somebody who was suffering, whose mental health was suffering and needed help. Also, there's I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Paul, I'm sure you have, the Zero Suicide Alliance. They have their website has it's a 20-minute program. You can go on and you can do the training on there. It takes 20 minutes. It's really, really worthwhile, and they cover all the bases for being able to talk to somebody who's suffering and to help. And within that, by doing that, even if you don't think you're suffering, you may realise a few things while you're doing it as well. You maybe didn't understand beforehand, and just generally trying to get not only the idea about that there is possibility for recovery, but also it's the awareness of it as well, and trying to get that conversation happening more regularly, so that we can A, remove the stigmatisms, and B, get people talking about this, so that it's not swept under the carpet, that it's not kind of considered, a weakness, but actually a strength instead. And that's been really, really key to what we've been trying to do in Metal for Life.
Yeah, I think that's an important part of it, isn't it? Because that whole thing about saying, "Oh, I don't want to be a burden," and I've always had this issue with friends of mine that have said, "Oh, I was having a rough time 6 months ago," and you're like, "Well, why didn't you get in touch?" And they're like, "Well, I didn't want to be a burden." You're just like, "Well," and for me, I've always had this. I lecture people on it. I lecture my friends on it. To me, that's them being a bad friend. They're not giving me a chance to help them. They think that they're actually being a burden, but you're not giving me a chance to help you. I want to help you, and you're depriving me of that by keeping it to yourself and not letting me know. If you're a friend, then you're a friend, and that's the point.
That's a good point.
It's a two-way thing, and I get annoyed with people when they don't reach out to me. But as you said, one of the key things I think you said there, the understanding of the people around it, because it is difficult to know what to say. But I'll tell you what I found very, very helpful was the Matthew Johnston books. I Had a Black Dog and Living with a Black Dog, because they are really, really simple, really simple illustrations of the right things to say and the wrong things to say, because all that sort of like, "Oh, come on, cheer up," or "Oh no, things aren't so bad," or people link things with well, what about this, and people can't see that. It's literally, and I think the illustration of that, when literally the dog is literally enveloping their whole view, and you're so things like that. So anything that can help, as I say, it's not just. I mean, I had leukemia when I was 13, and it wasn't just about my strength; it was about the strength of the people around you. So if you've got that sort of positive attitude and that knowledge around you, that can only be a good thing, and that's what you need to encourage.
I actually think that people who struggle with their mental health are some of the strongest people I know. We've come across people in the last year and a half that have gone through some of the most horrendous things in their lives, and they're not only, they haven't just survived, they're living. They might be living a completely different life from the one they had before, but they're actually doing so incredibly well, and it's just amazing how many inspiring people you can come across if you just look and listen to what people are actually saying. I think we're all very busy nowadays with our heads and our work and our social media and things like that. And I think we do like to promote communication, genuine communication, and having support groups where people can be themselves. They can say what they want or say nothing if they don't want to either. Is a really useful tool, and I think it's sort of quite well known now that it's a good way of helping people on their journey.
One thing that's occurred to me while we've been having this conversation, and it's I'm going to ask you to try and answer this as honestly as you can, because it's just occurred to me. Metalheads in general, we're seen as being a very sort of passionate and welcoming and friendly community, but are you finding through the conversations that you're having with people that the fact that the music itself is often very dark and has very dark themes within it, do you find that that's sometimes a contributory factor, or do you find that the music, is it more of a help or is it more of a hindrance with people when they're in that place?
I think where music's concerned, it's very hard to kind of put it down to one thing, but very often the music, no matter how dark it is often the source of comfort that people have. And unfortunately, with being a metalhead, I feel like the more kind of choose my words carefully here, the established kind of help that you maybe would seek would automatically target that straight away as a source of being what the problem is, rather than being something that is very often a source of comfort for an awful lot of people. I think self-expression as well. You know, it's really, really important. And I think when you have a subculture like metal, targeting what they do is not the way forward necessarily, and saying, oh, it's the darkness of the music. It's all, yes, it is all of that, absolutely. And of course but what it also means is they're probably more open to discussing things like that as well, because of the fact that they've listened to this music, and it's the sort of music that it's not just something you sort of throw on in the background. When people listen to the metal, they really listen to it. You know, and that can be very much a source of comfort for them, I think, anyway. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, I think as well that it does, like, obviously metal's a massive, massive genre. Yeah. So there are, you know, there's an entire subgenre of black metal specifically about depression, which is obviously going to contribute to those sort of feelings. But there's also plenty of other genres that maybe wouldn't, like power metal, like, is amazing. Like, you know, that's some of the most
very jolly. Yeah,
it's the most uplifting music you can ever hear, or something like Ailstorm or something, like, you know, or Corpaclani or something like that. That's all really happy music. Or there's again recent research showing that people would associate, say, it was brutal death metal they were talking about, like Bloodbath, and there was another band, but I can't remember, that they associated that more with joy than aggression. And I'd be saying, like, recently I've been getting more into like a lot of like Bolt Thrower and sort of Wonder stuff, and that just is I'd be different maybe than some other people, and I don't really focus on lyrics in a lot of metal. I just focus on riffs and like the, you know, how it sounds and the whole sort of package. And a lot of the time that is just really fun to listen to, and that's, for me, and I think for a lot of other metalheads, why it is so attractive as a genre, because you can go into that sort of stuff, or you can listen to your much slower, more, well, contributing, depressing stuff, if you want to call it that. But again, it also does come down to the individual and how they respond to, like, some people might say that those sort of genres that some people might say is much darker, they might see that as a source of strength and a source of comfort for them, like Gareth was saying. Yeah.
I think it's really up to the individual, as you say, isn't it? You know, and you know, we don't all necessarily like the same kind of music either, probably just as well. But you know, I think one of the points is to allow people to find what they like and let them, you know, let them feel the energy and the passion in it, and let it comfort them and help them. You know, the metal I listen to tends to keep me driven. You know, I'm a bit like Chris. I don't necessarily follow the lyrics so much, possibly because a lot of the bands I like are Scandinavian. But you know, it's the energy in the actual music that really drives me forward. You know. Yeah. There's some cracker local bands here in Northern Ireland as well, I have to say, you know, and it's amazing for us to be able to go and, you know, pay a couple of quid to see these guys play live right in front of your face, you know.
Yeah, well, that's a good place to sort of circle things round again as well, because you guys were at the Metal to the Masses final a few weeks ago with Lock Horns as the winners. So it must have been good to be able to get there, to get your message out. And I should imagine that Danny's name was on a lot of people's lips as well. Yeah,
it really was. There's a lot of love for Danny in the room that night, and you know, I think just seeing the place so packed full of people, just all there for one reason, you know, to support the 7 bands that were playing in our final. It was fantastic, and there was a real buzz about the place, wasn't there? And you know,
everyone was smiling. It was great.
I didn't fancy Simon's choice that night. There could have been a few guys that were in the running for the final, but everybody did really well, and it was great to see so many people out. It's a great opportunity when we can go there as a charity for people to come and speak to us and find out a bit more about what we do, and know it's almost that they know we're there for them. They might not be coming to see us on a regular basis, but they know that we're there, and sometimes that's all the help you need.
Yeah, I'm really glad I was really glad to see that you guys were there, and obviously we've at Bloodstock's festival this year we were partnered with Young Minds now as well, so we're going to see a lot of them. I'm hopefully going to be speaking to them on the podcast in a few weeks to find out a little bit more about the charity and that lot. But I think I'd say mental health now is just such a killer. You look at all the statistics, and it's like that the suicides are sort of overtaking heart attacks and cancer and all this sort of thing, and it's like an epidemic. But and there doesn't seem to be a one fix for it. Obviously, there's lots of different ways to actually tackle it. So the more things like this, I think we get involved in, where we've got, say especially a big group of mainly sort of younger demographic of people as well coming to Bloodstock, then the fact that we have a Samaritan's tent there, we've got the Young Minds, we've also talked to Livewire Youth Music, who are based down in the southwest, and they've been one of our Metal to the Masses ones as well. So I'm really glad and I'm really proud to be to have that sort of thing associated with Bloodstock.
It's fantastic, and I think there's no one cure for mental illness, I suppose, because everybody is so individual, and as we always say, everyone's their own expert. And all we can do, all of any of our support groups and organisations and charities can do, is to try and support people while they find their own way, and give them a bit of inspiration, give them a bit of guidance if they need it. And it's I think having that kind of ethos at something like Bloodstock is incredibly important. And I think, just back to what we were talking about with metal and the lyrics and the way we speak and so on, I think metalers generally tend not to shy away from specific words and specific topics of conversation and so on. And I think we can all build on that. We can all just keep on talking about these things. It can happen to anybody. It happens a lot, so let's just keep it out in the open and let people know that there's help there when they need it. It's a strength. It's not a weakness at all.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I think that's a positive note to end that on. So thanks very much. It's been absolutely fascinating having you guys on, and I'm really, really great to hear the great work that you're doing over there. And just on a personal note, obviously, I spoke to Danny. I listened to the interview that I did with him before doing this interview earlier on today and that lot, and just to pass on, my condolences to you as well. It's just it's such a tragic loss. I'm glad that you've got something positive out of it, and it's great to hear that he's still remembered and that he's mentioned at the Metal to the Masses things and things like that. So
thank you. He won't be forgotten. That's for sure. And I think all we can do is try and continue to help other people who are in a similar situation, and that's the best that I can hope for nowadays. To help people. So yeah, it's and I think we'll all be in Gareth will be there in person, but we'll be in Bloodstock in spirit, and so will Danny.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Well, thanks for talking to us.
It's been great to speak to you and connect with you, Paul. Yeah. And as I say, keep doing what you're doing. It's fantastic. Just building on that metal community and the mental health community as well. It's fantastic work. So. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for talking to us, Paul.
Cheers, Paul. Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to finish off with some music from Danny's band. We played Ascension after that interview that I did with him, so we're going to finish off the interview with that. So thanks for talking to us all, and we'll head out with Shrouded and Ascension. Cheers, bye now.
Bye.
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 Jeff from Possessed. You're listening to Bloodstock Radio.
Okay, so that was Shrouded with Ascension, our Metal to the Masses Belfast winners in 2017. And huge thanks to Gareth, Chris, and especially Gillian from Metal for Life Northern Ireland there for taking the time to talk to us about Danny and about what they're trying to do over there. And if you want to learn more about them, then their website is Metal for Life NI, that's FOR Life NI for Northern Ireland at the end of it. .co.uk, and you can see how you can help them out and maybe buy a bag or a t-shirt to help them continue their good work. Okay, we are fast approaching the end of the show, but before we finish off with our Alien Weaponry catch-up, we also had a couple of Bloodstock 2019 band announcements earlier in the week, so I'll just rattle through those quickly. We've already told you about a few of these via our Metal to the Masses coverage so far, but officially announced on the New Blood stage on Friday were our Blackburn winners Grand Elder, who we had on last week, Blind Divide, who won in Cardiff on Saturday, and I actually spoke to them in person on Monday night at the Alien Weaponry gig, and that interview should go out on next week's show. And also on Friday will be Anna Kim, our Bournemouth winners from the weekend. Then on the Saturday we have Scars of Remembrance, who won in North Wales last weekend, and on Sunday we have Illyrian, our Wolverhampton winners, and Lost in Lavender Town, our Stoke winners, both of whom we had on last week's show. And finally Fearbound, who won in Hitchin, and who will also be on next week's show. So that's the New Blood stage covered. And then we also had our first Jaeger stage announcements. So on the Friday, we have Graves, Beggar and Sky Pilot from Northern Ireland. And believe it or not, Gareth from Metal for Life Northern Ireland, that we just spoke to there, is actually a member of Sky Pilot, and they are excellent. Saw them in Leicester a few weeks back, where I also saw Foul Body Autopsy, who is playing the Jaeger along with Black Shuck on the Saturday. I also did an interview with him at Foul Body Autopsy. It's a one-man death metal band, if you don't know him. So we're going to have that coming up for you soon. And finally, on the Sunday, we will have Jailbirds and Women O' War. And if you haven't seen what they are yet, then make sure you check them out. So, by my reckoning, that is now a massive 88 bands announced so far, with around 30 still left to announce. And if you haven't got your ticket yet, then check out all the links on this podcast and get that sorted. Otherwise, you could end up missing out on utterly awesome performances like the one we saw last year on the Sophie stage from these guys, the awesome Alien Weaponry. And apologies in advance for the fanboying in this, but I genuinely do believe that these guys have an absolutely huge future ahead of them. And it is great that we at Bloodstock had a small part to play in helping that progression, because that, my friends, is exactly what we're here for. So, here's a quick Metal to the Masses update, and then it's Alien Weaponry finishing off podcast number 76 of Bloodstock Radio.
And now, a Metal to the Masses update.
This is Chris from the CPR show Hersham FM with your Brighton Metal to the Masses update. Grim Ravine sealed their spot in the final last time out, which just leaves one heat this coming Saturday, 15th June, at the Green Door store, with another slot to be filled by either Ariandel, Immersis, Villainous or Confronted. Guest headliners are last year's Hitchin Metal to the Masses winners, 13. Doors open 6 PM. As per usual, it's a free show. Get yourselves down there.
Band chat.
Okay, next up on Bloodstock Radio, we're having a catch up with the guys from Alien Weaponry. How are we doing, guys?
Yeah, pretty good, mate. Pretty good.
Cool. Well, yes, rewinding back about a year ago when no one here had heard of you, and I was on Skype at 5 o'clock in the morning talking to you guys. Yeah, you've been a bit quiet since. Not much going on in your lives, really?
Oh, yeah, I know, mate. It's been pretty dormant.
Yeah, nothing's been happening whatsoever.
Yeah. The overwhelming thing for me is that, in all seriousness now, I'm sitting in front of the same three guys, and that to me is quite astonishing. Aside from the music, aside from anything else, to have gone on the journey that you guys have gone on in the last year, and to just still be the same down-to-earth guys, musicians, just want to play your music, I think that's quite extraordinary. And I know Aussies and Kiwis have a kind of a little laid-back sort of attitude to it and things and that lot, but that to me is extraordinary. I don't know what you can reply to that, really, other than say,
yeah, I mean, we appreciate it, and we didn't try to, so that's nice to hear.
Yeah, and I think I say it's kind of from, I don't know, having chatted to your mum and dad here and that sort of thing. I think they sort of keep you guys grounded with it all and that. And then
yeah, mate. When we're home, you still have to do the dishes and hang out the washing and all that stuff. So we're just regular old teens, really, but doing some pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that a lot of people won't realise is that obviously, as I say, a year ago, nobody here knew you, but you guys have been doing this for a long time back in New Zealand before you came over here. So it's not like, these are your first gigs. You've been gigging for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, I think we played our first show together when I was 12 and you guys were 10. And that was, I think we played the same 3 or 4 songs for about an hour. And we got paid $50 for it, and it was in this dodgy little nightclub on K Road, which is like New Zealand's red light district in Auckland.
Yeah.
So, that was kind of our first gig, and that was close to 7 years ago now. So it's been a while.
Yeah. But, I mean, looking to where you're getting now, the actual trajectory of things, I mean, I know, you've had plans, you've had sort of, ideas about how it would go, but this must be going a lot bigger and a lot faster than what you thought.
Honestly, and recently we've met more people than I thought I'd ever meet in my whole life, like just people involved with the music industry, and it is such a tight-knit community. It's definitely buzzy seeing how quickly things are changing, and like even getting bumped onto the main stage of Download, it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, see, because there is a buzz about you guys, and it's not just here. I mean, America. I know from speaking to your dad when we were over in when I went over to see you guys in Belgium, and he was like, "Oh, it looks like America's going to happen quicker than what we thought it was going to happen as well." So again, that must have just been.
Yeah, I mean, we've been to America twice since we saw you in Belgium. So America's catching up quick actually. So it's going pretty well for us over there.
Yeah. And how are you finding the sort of difference between the UK crowds, European crowds, American crowds? Are they sort of different over there, or is it a similarity?
I think Europe especially, they eat, breathe, live metal constantly. If they turn up to a metal concert, they know what they're doing, and they know their stuff. In America, I don't know, it's hard to tell. It changes all over America. I mean, New York's a bit harder to get into the vibe, but everywhere in Texas is crazy, Yeah, and I mean, the UK, we've only played one headline show in Wales, and I mean, it was a little venue, but, it was lots of fun.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it matched our experience at Bloodstock last year. Yeah. Everyone over here just goes absolutely insane. Which is fucking awesome for us.
They make the pits look dangerous, as Lewis said.
Yeah, I mean, we had a chick last night sitting right next to the mosh pit in a wheelchair. Pointed it out, but that was.
Yeah, we had someone actually in the tent that you played in Bloodstock last year when Suicidal Tendencies played. They had a guy in a wheelchair, and they got him crowd surfing, and they got him up onto the stage.
We've seen that at Barking and Summer Breeze and stuff.
But an electric wheelchair.
Yeah,
we've seen it in an electric wheelchair. That's hard out.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, so, I don't normally give bands advice, but Lewis, you know what I'm going to tell you now, don't you? If you're at a gig in Cardiff, don't say that the English crowds are crazy for your music, okay?
Well, I'll tell you what, the Cardiff crowds are crazier.
Well, you're in England now, so you've got to be, you got to make sure that.
I'm just being honest. Yeah. I was meant to say the UK, but I even think that might have been. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to be careful.
I apologise to you, Wales, and I'll never do that again.
You made Wales crazy.
Don't do that in Scotland, or you won't make it out of Scotland. Trust me, you really won't. Yeah, we do not have the best history with Wales and Scotland in England. So but it was a good gig last night, though, wasn't it? As I say, it was a tight little venue. I've not been to Fuel before, but it was absolutely rammed and really receptive crowd, obviously.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it took like half a song for them to like kind of get out of their comfort zone, and then they really went for it. So it was lots of fun for sure.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I've noticed, I mean, I've obviously seen you at Bloodstock from side of stage, and then saw you at Belgium from the actual crowd point of view, which was way better. But so someone put a comment on Facebook earlier on today, so they're on top form when I saw them, and I'm like, yeah, they're always on top form. That's the thing. It's like, that's this consistent thing across your shows. There doesn't seem to be any kind of low level of that, and the reception to you guys has just been outstanding. So
I appreciate it, man. I mean,
yeah, that's funny because like you say that in like every show, I don't think we've done a show yet where one of us hasn't come off just absolutely fuming about how we played because it was so crap.
Yeah. Well, that's
actually, Bloodstock was one of those that was actually pretty good.
One of the.
It was like yeah. There's only like a couple ones.
I played pretty well. I played pretty well last night. But yeah, definitely I feel like
I screwed up a bit.
I do feel like when you're the one writing the music, you can definitely notice every little minor fuck up that go over most people's heads. But you know, I guess we're all our own worst critics when it comes to that.
And I mean, yeah, we've actually gotten a lot better since Bloodstock because when we toured with Ministry, you know, that was a pretty brutal time schedule. I mean, we had 21 shows in 30 days.
Yeah.
So we used to performing with fucking no sleep and hardly any food, you know. We used to performing in extreme conditions.
Yeah, it was like minus 1,000,000 degrees.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, it was good. It was a good tour for us. It really built our stamina. So we can play a full set now without tiring out.
Outside. That's how bad it was.
So yeah, so rewind back to Bloodstock then, obviously, because that was where we all saw you guys there, and the reception that you got there, like before and afterwards the show as well, because obviously I took you guys over to the press area afterwards and that, and even just walking from the Sophie stage across to the thing, we had so many people just mobbing you guys.
Yeah, that was quite a cool experience. Like to have a whole like group of people who came out there, like, you know, and they all seemed to be there just specifically, you know, so they could say hi and you know, talk to us afterwards. Like they all waited around, and that was really cool. Like,
I think that was the first time and the only time that's really happened at a festival was
like full on like massive crowd afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, we had all the Primordial Radio lot outside for all the photo opportunities and all that, which was good fun. They were devoted as ever. So so obviously you're here now, and you've got Download this weekend, which is just going to be again. I mean, you know, Bloodstock's Drownload. Yeah, so you've definitely. Which island are you on? Are you on the one with the good weather or the bad weather?
Who knows, mate? I mean,
North Island's hotter.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's like
New Zealand can't make its mind up, you know. It's sunny one minute, 5 minutes later, it's pissing down with rain, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we're up the top, so you know, generally it's a bit warmer, but yeah, down south it can snow and stuff. We never get snow. It's more rain and sun.
Yeah, well,
switches.
Download will be wet this weekend, as you've already seen the last few days. It is going to be a little bit, but it'll be busy. You'll get a lot of people out there for you. And I'd say I put a post on Facebook earlier on. I think that's really, really. I mean, you know, you got a big profile from Bloodstock last year, but obviously there's a lot more people go to Download, and it's a lot more wider range of sort of people with the rock and all that sort of thing. So I think that you will see a definite spike in things after this weekend as well.
Yeah, well, we hope so. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of crowd we can pull early on in the day, but you know, it's a pretty big venue, so I think.
Yeah. Well, let's say as you've seen, the UK crowds are dedicated. You know, Bloodstock. I think our first band's going at 10:30 at Bloodstock, and it's busy. You know, there's a lot of people out there to see them and that as well. So, so you played a couple of new songs last night as well. I noticed that, and I'm not really a massive fan of Ministry, but did I notice at the sort of beginning of it that we got a little bit more that sort of...
No, we wrote the song, and you know, as soon as we had finished it, we kind of listened it over, and we're kind of thinking, like, people are going to think we just played a tour with Ministry, and now look at us now, you know. So
let's put samples on everything.
I mean, our other one, the one that's not released yet, is not quite as Ministry-esque. So
yeah.
I feel like we're, I guess, you know, we're not consciously inspired by actually having played with Ministry, but I guess it has kind of come through.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, obviously you've got to be inspired by different types of bands, and you know, you're just starting out. There's no reason why you have to, you know, create another album the same as two. You can go different wherever you want to go. So have we got any timescales on that yet in terms of new material?
We're writing when we can. It's kind of hard to write, like, at least for us, you know, as musicians. It's hard to write on tour because it's a whole other, you know, mind space. Or I mean, it's whenever we get the time, you know. So I mean, as soon as possible without rushing it, because we want to make it good.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent. Well, we look forward to it. So I enjoyed hearing the new ones and that, and looking forward to seeing you guys again. tonight, because I reckon I'm going to have to stop stalking you, though, because I get reputations for these things, so I'm not quite going to make it to the rest of the UK shows, but yeah, it's been great catching up with you again.
Yeah, thank you for coming to our first 3.
That's all right, it's cool. That's how I'll say first 3, and I've done the Europe one as well, so, you know, you get in there. So
yeah,
cool. All right, well, cheers for talking to us, guys. Hope download goes amazing, and yeah, we hope to see you back at Bloodstock again soon at some point as well, because I know all the Bloodstock people will be wanting me to say that. Make sure you get those guys back. So yeah, I think it might be a little bit either higher up on the Sophie, or maybe even you might get over to the main stage. We'll see.
That'd be nice.
Cool. Right.
Be good.
Okay, we're going to finish off with the new song that is Ahikar. So let's hear that. Alien Weaponry. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
By the fans, for the fans. Bloodstock Radio.